Okay, good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you again for joining our MGT Zoom webinar to talk about how Zoom is more than just meetings and how the Zoom platform can enable teaching and learning and collaboration in schools. Quick agenda, we'll go through some introductions about who MGT is, AMS MGT is, Zoom look back and vision, Zoom AI strategy, E911, local survivability, operational efficiency, some next steps, and then we'll open up from some Q&A at the end. Couple introductions. I'm Edwin Dotson, the VP of Solutions Architecture West for MGT, and we have Donovan from Zoom Communications, who is a Unified Communications Specialist. So MGT has been helping public sector organizations like yourself for over 50 years, helping impact communities for good, identifying technology and services that best fits their need. And AMS.net recently joined MGT last year, and we've had 35 years of experience providing public sector technology solutions in California. So our expertise is to provide a holistic SLED solution to impact communities for good, right? Anywhere from strategy and implementation, cybersecurity and resilience, IT infrastructure and cloud, and performance and operations, right? So it's really bridging the gap across your entire organization, no longer just technology, which AMS.net was known for. We're now able to help you in all your departments, all your silos, whether it's the business office, whether it's facilities, whether it's your technology department, to help really make an impact in your communities. We strive to become trusted advisors, offering you specialized solutions for you, not cookie cutter solutions that everybody else has, and make sure that we partner with you to design and implement technology solutions that address your needs in the different technology silos, such as network infrastructure, cybersecurity, cloud, and data communications and physical security. We offer a full line card of manufacturer supports, anywhere from low voltage cabling, cybersecurity, network infrastructure, cloud data, physical security, communications, mass notification, power protection, and co-managed services. And what we really want to focus on today is our partnership with Zoom and how that can help really impact your organization, communication, and communication strategy. And with that, I'll turn it over to Donovan. You're on mute, Donovan.
Of course, the guy from Zoom is on mute. It happens to the best of us. Thank you, Edwin. I appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to present here with the MGT team. As Edwin shared, I'm a unified communications specialist here at Zoom. So my area of focus is really on the telephony aspects of the portfolio. So I've spent a lot of time working with clients on the adoption of Zoom Phone, a lot of additional conversations around Zoom Contact Center of late now that we've broadened into that market. I really appreciated that last slide that Edwin shared. Many of those vendors on there are partners of Zoom's as well. So, one of the things we'll highlight as we go is the extensibility of the Zoom platform. And obviously, many of you are aware, we're no longer operating in silos, right? There's a need to interoperate across that spectrum of vendors that Edwin just shared. And I think hopefully you'll see that as we progress here. But my goal today is to really focus on kind of how the Zoom portfolio has really broadened to further impact the education industry beyond just our kind of traditional heritage in video conferencing. And for most of you, you've probably used Zoom. You've joined a meeting like this, maybe like me during the pandemic. Your kids use Zoom for Taekwondo or other sports. And commonly in my conversations with clients, that is still what we're known for. And there's often a lot of surprises when I share the perspective that's given on this slide on just how far we've come since our kind of early days in 2010 and 2011, where it really was just a meetings company. I had the pleasure of working at Cisco for 20 years and spent a lot of time working in the WebEx industry. Our CEO and founder, Eric Yuan, was a key driver to the innovation that was delivered in WebEx back then. And, that's how Zoom started. There were some frustrations with the challenge in migrating that environment and that infrastructure to the cloud. And he went off on his own and built what is now Zoom. That kind of grow your own approach to, collaboration technology still persists today. Probably about 90% of what you see on this slide is in-house innovation. So we very much leverage a strategy that is build and not buy. There are definitely some acquisitions in here that play a role from a technology perspective. But as you can see, we have very much evolved from a video conferencing company to a full kind of unified communications platform. A big focus of the conversation today is really going to be around Zoom Phone. Right around 2015, kind of we brought that to the market. That absolutely grew over the course of the pandemic. We have, further expanded into full-fledged contact center services. So being able to provide for some of those more kind of complex call flows and interactions, the ability to provide some self-service via Zoom Virtual Agent. And then increasingly, over the last year and a half, not unlike many others in the market, AI has really come to the forefront. And we'll share a little bit today on kind of how we're approaching kind of leveraging artificial intelligence as part of all of these offerings that you see here. But you'll continue to see additional kind of innovation from Zoom there, and really hit on kind of specific collaboration-focused use cases from an AI perspective. So hopefully that little bit of a history lesson helps set the stage on the breadth of capabilities that you can consume from that Zoom platform now. And as I mentioned, our vision has changed over the years from a kind of meetings and video conferencing centric view of the industry and where we can make a difference to really focusing on kind of that platform aspect of things. So our kind of strategic vision is an AI first work platform for human connection. And, it started with video conferencing. Video conferencing is still a core tenet to everything we're going to talk about. Even in the contact center, video is a separate and distinct channel. So you definitely see that video heritage persist throughout here. And that's really where that kind of human connection element comes in. That we, really kind of hold near and dear to our heart as a core innovation tenet. I did want to make one statement about how we leverage AI from an overall approach, and that is we have made some very public statements. This is part of our kind of data privacy agreements that we hold along with our clients. But very specifically, we do not use customer content to train our models or any third-party models that we use as part of the AI features within our product set. So we provide thoughtful controls to protect organizations and users. This is even more important in education, where we've got kind of policies and requirements around things like FERPA and other regulations. But know that none of your content, none of your meetings, none of your phone calls, none of your chats or other interactions that happen on the platform are being used to train our models or some of the third-party models that we leverage to provide those services. So another kind of industry kind of view that I wanted to provide was some information from Gartner. And I think many of you are probably aware of the Gartner Magic Quadrant. I very specifically chose not to show that here. That's very kind of commonly leveraged as a decision-making tool when evaluating any technologies. Many of those vendors that Edwin showed have an associated Gartner Magic Quadrant. We rank very well in the Magic Quadrant across the breadth of the capabilities that we have. But I'm very specifically focused here on what Gartner calls the voice of the customer. And this is a little bit different in that the voice of the customer relies completely on the feedback of consumers and other organizations like yourself on a product after it's been deployed. So this is all right, you deployed Zoom, what do you think about it? And we really stand out here And what makes me kind of leverage this visual is that it maps very well to the answer I very often get from customers when I ask the question, why Zoom? And it could be, why did you choose Zoom for meetings? Why did you choose Zoom for Zoom Phone? But probably the most common answer we get in that is that it just works. And I think the feedback provided in this Gartner voice of the customer very much aligns with the feedback that we hear all the time. And this is kind of the industry view on that. But we are one of the kind of very highly recommended vendors for customers that have already gone down the path with Zoom and have chosen to deploy Zoom for technical reasons, for operational reasons, or other things, and continue to recommend it. So I think this is pretty powerful and something that's not looked at a lot as compared to the Magic Quadrant. But if you're evaluating kind of a technology or an investment in any service where Gartner has some input on this, I would recommend you kind of use that as another tool in that evaluation process. So kind of to speak a little bit about some of the AI innovations that we have brought to bear across the platform, I'm going to highlight on a couple of these specifically. But you'll note we kind of have this term that is called AI Companion. And this is the notion of a set of features and capabilities that leverage some level of artificial intelligence that are available to you as part of your potentially existing agreement with Zoom. So AI Companion is not something you pay extra for. These are just features and functions that come along with those components of the platform that you leverage. So, for most, a lot of people are participating in Zoom meetings. There's a whole breadth of capabilities as part of AI Companion that can be brought to bear during a meeting and after a meeting. So, being able to join a meeting late and ask a question like, when was my name mentioned in this meeting? And leverage AI to provide me a quick synopsis of what I might have missed there. For me, leveraging that meeting summary is become an absolutely critical part of my workflow. So, for decades, we've been recording meetings, and I'll be the first to admit the number of times I go back and watch that recording end to end is pretty minimal. These meeting summaries really give me the ability to very quickly go back and see a quick summary of that meeting, choose if I need to go back and watch the whole thing or not, or again or not, and really provide me a great place to go back and reference, what came up on a call, what do we need to address in the next meeting, and things like that. The kind of part that I talk about more and more is really some of these AI capabilities that come to Zoom Phone. I'll hit on some of that specifically here in a minute. But another one I like to highlight here is some of what we're doing on the whiteboard front. If you haven't leveraged Zoom Whiteboard, I would definitely encourage you to. There's a lot of phenomenal education uses there. I'm a recovering whiteboard addict. That was my favorite thing to do when I walked into a meeting, was to pick up the pen and get on the whiteboard. I can now leverage some AI to build whiteboard templates and have some stuff pre-canned. Doing this with call flows for a phone configuration is usually very helpful. So a lot of things you may not have thought about are available here. And again, no additional cost. These are functions that are just part and parcel to the set of Zoom capabilities that you have, depending on the various product set that you're leveraging from Zoom. And I mentioned this specifically, but to drill into the meetings capability, just because most people are still interacting with Zoom as part of a video conference, I think it's to highlight some of these capabilities very specifically that you might be able to use today if you're not using them already. Things like leveraging AI Companion to create a meeting agenda. So again, leverage the summary from that last meeting to create an agenda for the next meeting, something very handy from an efficiencies perspective. Being able to get a real-time summary of the meeting. So for those of us that are bouncing from one to the next and we show up late, asking AI Companion within that meeting to give me a summary of what's happened so far might be very helpful. I don't need to then interrupt, hey, sorry, I'm late. Catch me up, please. We can leverage AI to do that. And then this notion of tasks. So you'll see this kind of presented as we talk a little bit more about Zoom Phone, but being able to leverage these summaries and the data from these interactions to generate tasks. So rather than me having to manage a list of to-dos, we can leverage AI to draw some of those tasks out. I think this could be very helpful for teachers. I'll share kind of how that might be here in a minute. But that's increasingly another component of what we're being able to deliver with AI Companion. So drilling into some of these capabilities around Zoom Phone. So we're going to spend probably the next good chunk of our time together going into a lot more detail on Zoom Phone, which is our kind of cloud telephony capabilities. There are a number of functions from an AI perspective that we bring to bear for in our soft phone client and for telephony use cases here as well. One of those is voicemail prioritization and the ability to extract tasks from those voicemails. So I talked about tasks a little bit earlier as it relates to a meeting summary. This is the notion of, I'm a teacher, I'm in class, my phone's not ringing, but calls might be ringing through to voicemail. I could automatically have a summary of that voicemail delivered to me. I can prioritize those voicemails, how they show up in my list based on the content, and I can have tasks extracted from those and presented to me automatically. So, if I get a call as a teacher for, maybe something from an IEP meeting, let's say, right? That might be something I want to prioritize over my regular voicemails from an administrative perspective. I can tag those and have them prioritized in my list. So a lot of efficiencies potentially to be brought to bear on kind of that voicemail use case that I think can be very helpful, especially in education. So, as I pivot to going into a little more detail around Zoom Phone, the kind of topics on the left are ones that I kind of want to call out right now and have you pay attention to as we go through the rest of this session. We're going to talk a lot about operational efficiency. Edwin kind of shared in the agenda, we've got a specific kind of piece on that, but you'll see that kind of persists throughout. One of the tenets of Zoom is really kind of this notion of ease of use and how easy is it for an end user to join a meeting and to share their screen and to turn their video on. Those are all things that have really played a role in our success, and that doesn't just stop with meetings. So when we talk about end users being able to leverage soft phone capabilities, the goal is to have that simple, and I think that's really a driver of our success there. But it also applies to administrators. We're going to talk about a couple functions that really kind of make a difference on that part of it. And we want to kind of elevate that community member experience. So how do we interface with the outside world? That's paramount in education. So hopefully there's some things here that we'll hit on that we'll show you how we're impacting on that front as well. So as I kind of jump into Zoom Phone specifically, another question that I get quite often is, Zoom Phone, I didn't know you guys did that. How new is it, right? How can you play with some of the larger kind of players in this space? And I like to start here to provide, again, another little bit of a history lesson into how we've been able to grow so fast and be as successful as we have been with Zoom Phone. We've got, about 8 million plus licenses out there in the wild, very, very well adopted just on the telephony side of the house. And really one of the key reasons why that has been able to take place is that we weren't starting from scratch. So, spoke to kind of the heritage of Zoom as a video conferencing provider. Much of the technology and the capability and the cloud infrastructure that was put in place to deliver the world's best voice and video over, public internet connections, the same technology that's required to pass voice traffic over those same networks. So if you think about, the voice over IP industry, the hard part was being able to deliver real-time traffic. So in the early days, it was voice. Today, it's HD video as well. But to deliver that real-time traffic over lower quality, lower bandwidth connections. And, you know, the bandwidth is not as much as a concern these days, given the success of that industry. But we're still delivering these capabilities over your public internet connections. So for us, that problem was solved, right? Being able to deliver at scale the high quality voice and video experience that we did over the course of the pandemic put the foundation in place to very easily be able to deploy PBX functionality on top of that. So, you know, it really was just a matter of kind of taking that foundation and putting the ability to make a phone call, to receive a phone call, to transfer a phone call, to put a call on hold, to have voicemail, right? All these functions that we traditionally equate to a phone system were just layered on top of that global infrastructure, providing all of the real-time media capabilities. And then it was a matter of adding DIDs or phone numbers to that, right? So establishing a global network of carriers that we work with that allow us to interface with the PSTN, the public switch telephone network. That's what allows us to place and receive calls to the outside world. So by having all of that in place already and layering capabilities on top, we were able to very quickly deliver an enterprise grade cloud telephony solution to our customers. And that's really been what has driven our success over the last, 5 years or so, and gotten us to the point where, we're one of the top kind of cloud providers, if not the top cloud provider in this space. So knowing that, what are some of the top concerns in education specifically? And I'd say even, in K-12 more specifically, but, the topic that probably comes up most often as I kind of ask the question about what customers are struggling with in their current telephony environments is E911 or enhanced 911 services. If you're not aware, there are kind of two primary pieces of legislation and another that is increasingly becoming legislation that are really driving the requirements in this space. One of those is Carey's Law. Carey's Law has been around for a while now, but it has kind of a couple main tenets, one of which is there should be no barrier to dialing 911. And historically, that barrier has been the need to dial an extra 9 to get an outside line. So kind of removing the need to dial anything extra and making sure that just dialing 911 gets the call to the first responders. And then the other is there has to be a notification mechanism to notify internal personnel when somebody does dial 911. So kind of two components that are tied to Carey's Law. Ray-Bombs Act, it really focuses on the location information that is shared with the first responders when somebody does dial 911. And this is some legislation that enforces the need to share granular location data. In a school district's case, it's building specific information, right? A lot of schools are kind of campus-based deployments. There may be separate physical buildings. We need to be able to narrow in on that building so that the first responders are aware, where that emergency is taking place. Increasingly, that is kind of expanding to be more granular in my experience. There's more and more of a desire from clients across industries, but especially in education, to get down to the classroom level, right? Like which classroom is that emergency happening in? And we'll talk about kind of how Zoom's nomadic E911 solution offers compliance with Ray-Bombs Act. And then I mentioned kind of Alyssa's Law. So Alyssa's Law is increasingly becoming legislation state by state. I think eventually we'll be at the point where this is probably a national requirement. But this is requiring the ability to have an emergency button of some sort that allows for a kind of silent alarm type of trigger to emergency authorities. So there's a number of hardware vendors that we're working with in this space that tie into our Nomadic E911 services that provide for kind of that panic button scenario. Some of them offer kind of silent interaction for the emergency services and other things, but that's another area that is absolutely on our radar and something that we kind of help you all in your compliance-based efforts. So I want to kind of drill down now into a little bit more information on how we actually help you be compliant with those kind of regulations and legislation. And I use this term nomadic emergency services. So that is a set of capabilities that we offer within Zoom Phone that allows for the coverage of all three of those kind of areas of need. So first and foremost, kind of I want to hit on the ability to deliver granular location information as well as that emergency call notification. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll notice a screenshot of the Zoom client. So this is representative of the soft phone services that you might use as an end user. You'll notice there the emergency service address is listed there. So that is derived from a variety of locations I'll speak to here in just a minute. But from a soft phone perspective, we have the ability to manage personal emergency addresses for users so that if they're working from home or working in an unmanaged network, they can update that address themselves. So that's a kind of an indicator that says, you know, hey, here's what the address we know we think you're at is this correct? If not, update it. And we provide some notification and management of that to the end user. And then in the kind of red screen there in the middle, that is an example of a notification that is sent to an internal emergency response team when somebody does dial 911. And we'll dig into that here in a little more detail, but you can see that includes the specific location and the address of where that person is calling 911 from. And, you know, you might be asking, you know, how do you determine what that address is or where the location is that caller is calling from? And that's really where this nomadic notion comes in. So our goal from an E911 perspective is that kind of you establish these mappings once, and then you don't have to deal with it day in and day out on a daily basis. It's all automatic as people and devices move around your network. So we kind of lump these locations into two categories. One, as I mentioned before, are these personal locations. So these are, you know, home office addresses, anybody that might be working somewhere outside of a network that you manage. And then there are, you know, what I've depicted here is district locations. Those are networks that you manage. And I really want to focus on that here first. And how we help with kind of the automation on that front is that as part of these nomadic E911 services, we've got the ability to leverage the intelligence coming from your network infrastructure to derive location information. So we can connect to your physical switches and your wireless access points and map those switches or those ports on those switches or those access points to location data. So if you've got, you know, let's use the kind of mobile scenario, you know, you've got a lot of teachers moving around the school with a laptop. The wireless access point where they have the highest signal strength is going to be kind of that primary source that is mapping their location information. So you set the physical address down to the building level, down to the room level, depending on how granular you want to get of that device or that port. Whatever is connected to it is going to leverage the location information from that device. When somebody dials 911, it's that location information that's going to be shared with the first responders. So the PSAP is going to see very specifically that, you know, this was a call from 4th Main Street on the 3rd floor in my example here. At that same time, when somebody places that 911 call, that alert that we talked about on that last slide is going to be sent to the internal safety and response team. So this is something you will configure. It will vary by site, likely. So you may want, the principal to be part of that team. They will get a notification that will show up on their physical phone. It'll show up on their soft client on their laptop. It may show up on their mobile device if they use the Zoom client on their mobile device. And that will include that same location information, very specific down to the granular level. But as you can see here, it also gives them some additional capabilities to participate in that call. And I'll focus on that here in a minute. But lastly, before I get there, I wanted to share, back on that very first slide, I kind of spoke to the breadth of the Zoom portfolio. One of those kind of items there that you may or may not have noticed was, our ability to provide digital signage. So with a Zoom meetings license, you have the ability to deploy digital signage and manage those displays that might be, within the school and the content that is displayed on them. We have some automation that can be brought to bear with our digital signage capabilities that provide these notifications when somebody dials 911 to update those digital signs. So you may want to have a sign depicted as is here, display kind of some internal turn-by-turn navigation for the emergency responders, right? To pinpoint where that emergency is, where that room is. We can automate all of that. And that's really kind of one of the main components that really speak to the power of the platform and having all of these capabilities integrated to provide kind of that seamless connectivity there. So drilling in on that emergency notification aspect of things. So, you may have read the legislation just requires that somebody's notified, right? So, that's this screen pop that says, Colin dialed 911. He's at 123 Counting Street in Bend. We take that a step further in being able to allow that emergency notification team the ability to participate on that call. So you'll notice the message that is delivered when that notification is sent. They have the option to listen in on that call, which is the left-hand side of the screenshot. So, again, using that principal example, the principal can listen in on that 911 call. Once they do that, they're presented with even more options. And you see those here on the right. They can barge in on that call. They can initiate a recording of that call so that, you along with the PSAP or the first responders have the recording of that interaction. So in cases where, the person dialing 911 or having the emergency may not be able to interact with the authorities anymore, being able to barge in and kind of speak on their behalf and talk to them while they're en route might be very valuable. And that's really where we kind of bring all of this together with the additional capabilities. Again, in K-12, we see the mobile aspect of this be very valuable. Somebody can be seeing all of these and interacting as I'm showing here on their mobile device by just having the Zoom client installed there. So pivoting from that to kind of another capability that's top of mind for many of our school districts specifically is kind of this notion of local survivability. So, I spoke to the resilience and the capabilities of the Zoom cloud infrastructure to deliver a highly available, high quality services down to our clients. But we're still relying on internet connectivity. So when you think about that as it relates to your school district, that's probably twofold, right? It's how do I provide resilience in my internet connectivity so that all of my services stay up? And that's increasingly inclusive of capabilities like LTE or satellite to augment your existing fiber connectivity to alleviate the single backhoe taking everything down. but we have a lot of conversations with customers that kind of incorporate a holistic approach to business continuity. And the other piece of this is, very specifically services that Zoom can provide that address the need for local survivability in the event of a WAN outage. And we have a capability that we call Zoom Phone Local Survivability, or ZPLS, that is a VM. It's a piece of software that can be deployed in your network that provides for varying levels of survivability in the event that all services to the internet are lost. So in this example, the district is completely cut off from the Zoom cloud infrastructure. Those ZPLS nodes are the local survivability nodes. Those can run as a VM in your existing virtualization infrastructure, or we have some hardware vendors like AudioCodes that can provide kind of a combined appliance that incorporates the session border controller or SBC functionality along with the ZPLS software. The advantage there is that you can have kind of local analog lines or local PSTN circuits to provide outside calling in the event of a failure as well. So in many cases, we're having conversations with clients around kind of holistic business continuity requirements, especially in K-12. There's increasingly a number of applications that rely on internet connectivity. Things like standardized testing are more and more being provided via the cloud that have a significant reliance on the internet. So it's not just a question often of how do I maintain dial tone survivability. It's how do I provide business continuity across my enterprise, and those are definitely conversations that we'd love to be a part of. So I'm going to kind of close here today with this kind of a conversation around operational efficiency. And, I didn't share in my introduction, but, my kind of heritage in this industry really comes from an IT operations mindset. I started my career at Cisco many, many years ago, multiple decades ago at this point, in IT, deploying kind of voice over IP solutions. And, as I have progressed over the last, 20 plus years, I still look at many of my interactions with an IT lens, right? It's kind of this notion of, all right, you may have great technology, but how easy is it to manage long-term, right? Because that's the question we're all asking is, it's great. I know the vendor's going to help me get this stuff deployed, but can I take the reins and run it day two? And, a lot of the kind of capabilities from an industry perspective that have been available around telephony and PBXs and cloud infrastructure have not necessarily been easy to use. And that's really where Zoom is changing the game. And I think differentiating in this space is that we're not only providing a solution that users like to use and can easily use, but that administrators can easily manage without a very specialized skill set. So I like to tell a little story here around this. Prior to that kind of career starting at Cisco, I go even further back into the days of CompUSA is really kind of where I got into this world. Doesn't even exist anymore, right? My kids would be clueless to hear me mention that name. But it was great at the time, right? We could walk into one of those stores and see shelf after shelf after shelf of boxes of floppy disks that we would need to buy and take home and load one by one into our computers to get done what we needed to get done and to get that new piece of software. One of those memorable pieces of software for me was Windows 95. It was a huge event. It was like 13 disks or something like that. I don't remember. But looking back, I thought it was pretty good. My son now, downloads 400 gigs worth of a single game via a click on the PlayStation Store, right? Way more efficient than that trip down to CompUSA. And again, that's over public internet connections, right? So our capabilities for consuming these services have increased massively over time. But he doesn't have to think about the logistics in going and getting a new game and starting playing it. And I equate that to PBXs and managing telephony infrastructure in this way. My CompUSA version of managing a call flow is depicted here on the left. And this is, I spent a lot of time in screens like this back in my career, and having to script a call traversing a queue was not uncommon, right? And just being able to make a change to this queue on adding another member to the queue, or changing whether I wanted it distributed by broadcast or sequential, was very complicated. And it's often that most teams didn't have a lot of expertise in these tools. And if I kind of look at this today, it's a very useful GUI interface that a novice could probably make their way through and configure. So what we're looking at is an IVR and a call queue combined in a Zoom Phone administration panel, and very straightforward to manage that call tree that's kind of depicted on the left, and make a few pull downs, click a few radio buttons to determine how those calls are routed to those users. This is more like the PlayStation Store than the CompUSA kind of experience on the left, and I think is representative of the overall kind of ease of use that we bring to bear on the administration side, which really hits to kind of this notion of operational efficiency. So, we've kind of done some industry research with Metrigy over the years. One of the kind of assessments that they did is that, by deploying Zoom Phone as compared to some of the other kind of cloud telephony providers that are out there, Zoom is, costs 30% less to manage and operate. And those costs are soft sometimes, right? It's costs in people, it's costs in third-party managed services offerings and that type of thing. But that's a significant number that I definitely kind of stand behind, just given my experience in the industry and the capabilities that we've brought to bear from a Zoom perspective. So I will pause here and kind of just close with a case study from another kind of district in the area that had recently deployed Zoom Phone, and just wanted to kind of highlight a couple things that they provided to us in feedback on what drove the decision and what were some of the positive outcomes that they saw. So hitting on that kind of operational efficiency notion, they were struggling with maintaining their current telephony environment. And one of the bullets under there is one that I hear often is it's getting harder and harder to find the expertise that I need to manage my environment. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of kids coming out of college these days that are like, I want to go all in on telephony and voice over IP. So that's getting more and more challenging, especially for school districts where those talent pools are maybe a little bit less. So I think that one hits near and dear to my heart. The other here was around mobility. So I kind of alluded to a number of kind of points throughout my presentation here around being able to leverage the mobile client for a variety of things. This was key to them, right? That phone number exists in the Zoom application on my laptop. It may exist on the physical phone that's in the classroom where I'm at for the day. But I also have the Zoom app on my mobile phone where all of those services are available to me as well. So that was a key kind of tenet for them. And then the challenge around kind of, as depicted here, no privacy for educators. It was the notion of educators want to use their mobile device, but they don't want parents to have their personal phone number or to be able to reach them anytime, realistically, right? So again, kind of getting back to that mobility aspect of things, by leveraging the Zoom client, I can still use my mobile device, but I've got the privacy of it being within Zoom, which is my district communications tool, it helps from a discoverability perspective as well, right? All of those call logs, those CDR records, any SMS texting that may happen is provided via the Zoom client and not via their carrier services on their mobile device. So I think, these are representative of what we hear from a lot of clients, especially our K-12 clients, around the benefits and some of the reasons for making a transition like this. And I think from there we can pivot to the Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share.
Yeah, thank you for that great update, Donovan. I don't see we have a couple questions we just wanted to ask. Hit on. One question is, we also use Teams and Microsoft Teams internally. Can this work with Zoom, or is there an integration? We have two other
Yeah.
questions after that as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's a great question. Definitely something that comes up commonly. I think we've got a number of integration points into Microsoft Teams. One of those specifically around kind of the telephony aspect of things is that we have a Zoom marketplace application for Teams. So this allows you to plug all of those capabilities that are available from Zoom, including phone. So being able to place and receive calls, being able to access voicemail and send SMS messages, all from within the Teams user interface. So, that's something that we can demonstrate and do often, but it's a native integration that's available as part of the marketplace.
Awesome. All the Nomadic 911, E911 features you talked about, is that an extra cost per user, or is that included with everything?
Oh, another good question, Edwin. So everything I kind of went through today is included in all Zoom Phone licensing, and no, there is no extra cost. So we made the decision early on, given kind of some of the legislation and the requirements around this, that it's not an option to deploy those things, and we wanted to make that as easy as possible for our clients to consume. So all of those capabilities are included as part of that license cost. You'll see no additional line item for E911 on any Zoom invoices.
Okay. And then the last question is, how does the Zoom Phone trial work? What are the best steps? What do we usually accomplish out of a trial?
Yeah, another good question, Edwin. So Zoom Phone trial, or a proof of concept, is definitely something that we kind of love to provide to clients who are evaluating options on this front. It being a cloud service, we've got the ability to relatively quickly, in a matter of hours, spin up a trial for our clients that gives them access to a production level infrastructure to test and evaluate all of these features and capabilities. We've got some pretty formal processes around that help with kind of understanding those kind of areas that need to be evaluated. So we've got some documentation around common, success criteria that are looked at as part of these POC processes, and like to schedule weekly calls to help our clients kind of get the environment built and off the ground to be able to test. But often from there, they are able to kind of run with it themselves to some extent, given that ease of use that I mentioned before. So definitely encourage, anybody who is evaluating technology in this space, kick the tires, right? It's one thing to hear me kind of tell it like I have here today, but it's another for your team to interact and see kind of firsthand just how easy it is to manage and deploy and use.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that. I don't see any other questions coming across. So with that, we can give people a couple minutes back in their day. Next steps, if you're interested in finding out information, either reach out to your Zoom account manager or your AMS MGT account manager, and we can set up some next steps.
Outstanding. Thank you, Edwin, and thank you all for the time today.
Thank you.